number one regret that people had, people who were dying, who knew that they were crossing over and making their transition, the top regret was I wish I'd have had the courage to live the life that I knew I was destined to live. In other words, that I had a purpose, that I knew that there was something greater that I came here to do, that I signed up for something other than just to fit in and to go along and to follow somebody else's rules. And most of us are not, don't allow ourselves the freedom to listen to those internal callings, those things that we all feel are just so important to us. I can give you two examples of the two most significant moments in my life that I can think of, other than the birth of my children and all those wonderful things that took place. But I went to my father's grave in 1974, a man that I just hated. I was filled with rage and antipathy and anger towards. And I was called to go there at the age of 34. And I went there because I was just angry. I wanted to make a connection. I just couldn't believe that this man, he'd been dead for 10 years and I had just found out. And I stood on his grave for the longest time just cursing and being angry. And I went back to my car. It was down in Biloxi, Mississippi. And I got into the rental car to drive back to New Orleans, and then I was going to fly back up to New York because I was a professor at St. John's University in New York City. I've been thinking about wanting to write and all of that, but nothing was going right for me at that time. I was out of shape, things weren't working well, I was drinking, I had been doing drugs, I was in a bad relationship. My whole life was just not on the kind of path that it is on today. And I got back in the car to go, and I felt I'd finally done that, and I had a calling. I was called back by some invisible intelligence, some burning desire, something that we call light, something that we call the impersonal part of us that is always directing us, and it's always directing you as well. You're listening to it sometimes. Most of the time we ignore it in the name of fitting in or doing when I don't have time, or I'm too old, or I'm too fat, or I'm too skinny, or I'm too white, or I'm too black, or I'm too poor, and endless we go with all of the reasons why we can't fulfill a destiny that we know is ours, that we signed up for, that we're here for in this infinite universe, that who we are is not this physical body that we're in that is here for a moment and gone. Who we are is this infinite intelligence, and we forget that. The same intelligence that created this infinite universe that never ends is you. You manifested in this infinite, divine, organizing intelligence. You're a part of all of it. And I got a calling, and the calling for somehow said, go back. You're not complete. That's not why you were sent here. That's not why I wanted you to go to your father's grave. I went back. Something came over me at the age of 34. I have no idea what it was. I do know now that it was light, it was God, it was that divine intelligence, whatever you call it. What I said at that gravesite, from this moment on, as I send you love, I send you kindness. Who am I to judge you? Who am I to condemn you? Who am I to be critical of you? I don't even know what you were living through and why you had to do what you did. I send you love from now on. I'd never had another bad dream about him. I was never angry about him. But the most intriguing thing happened is that my life made an entire shift. A shift that all of us can make at any moment. We never know. These callings are so strong, and they're always there. After I left Biloxi, I flew up to New York, flew down to Fort Lauderdale. I had 2 weeks. I checked into a motel on A1A, the Spindrift Motel, and I wrote for 14 days. And I wrote a book called Your Erroneous Selves, which became one of the largest selling books in history. And it propelled my life in a whole new way. I stopped drinking. I started getting exercising more. My relationships all changed. The divine person that I was to meet showed up. My children showed up. Everything changed and shifted because I was willing to listen to that inner voice, that light that said, go back. Another time, just a few years later, it was 1976, I was driving on the Long Island Expressway from where I lived in Huntington, New York, into the city. I was about to receive tenure, which at that time I was 36 years old. I had written 3 textbooks. I was a star there as far as they were concerned. I was going to begin, to live a life in which I was going to be a professor for the rest of my life. Tenure, guaranteed employment for the rest of my life, something that everybody at the university longs for. I was ready for it. And I pulled off the Long Island Expressway as I was contemplating that. And I sat on the side of the shoulder there for about a half an hour, just watching the cars go by, wondering and asking myself, do I really want to get tenure and stay here and do what I've been doing? I've already done this. I know how to do it. Am I going to be in the same office doing the same thing? Am I going to live 90 years, or am I going to live 1 year 90 times over and over again? And I decided that I just couldn't do it. And I just felt, this amazing moment came over of freedom. It was like it just was lifted off to me. And I got back on the freeway, got off at the exit at Grand Central and Utopia Parkway, parked my car right outside Marillac Hall, went up to the second floor, went into the dean's office, Dean Sarah Fassenmeyer, and I told her, I've written this book, and it's now just been published. It's called Your Erroneous Zones, that I wrote also as a result of another calling. And I said, I've got to take it out to the world. I've got to talk about it. I appreciate the fact that I could work here for the rest of my life, but it's just not something that I can do. These kinds of callings, we all have these. We know that we have a purpose. You already know that you have a purpose. You know, you're listening to that all the time. It's there. The idea that you can't do it or that you shouldn't do it or that my whole life has been impacted by listening and being willing to understand that. And there's a quote that I talk about at the seminar that'll be a part of this course and it goes like this. It's from William Blake. He said, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern, by William Blake. There are things that are known, and there are things that are unknown, and in between are the doors. And even Jesus said, I am the door. That is, the internal I amness within God is the door that you can open and discover so many new things.
And that allowing is a great substitute for doing, and trusting, and knowing that when you align yourself in the way that I'm asking you to align yourself here today as I speak to you about meaning, when you align yourself this way and begin to trust in what Lao Tzu called your original nature, and when you understand your original nature and you return to it, basically, that's all you're ever doing, even with all of the medical practitioners that are out there. Basically, they're really trying to help you to return to your original nature, your nature of well-being. There's not a doctor on this planet that can heal anybody, and they will all tell you that the body is the hero. It is not any medicines or any surgeries or anything out there that is what's doing it. That healing is this most magical thing. It's like the wind, It's just, you can't get a hold of it, you can't see it, you can't touch it, you can't grasp it, and all you can do is just watch the results, watch the effects of it. You cut your hand, and it bleeds, and you just watch it. And all of a sudden, things start happening inside of your body, and red blood cells head towards that direction, and white blood cells start doing this, and all kinds of things begin happening, not just there, but in your heart, and in your lymph system, and in your elimination system, and then your neurological system. It all starts working together, and it starts sending things to it, and such a scab forms, and then the scab dries up, and then there's a scar, and then things start. Nobody's done anything. What is there to do? It's part of the magic of allowing, of just getting out of the way and not trying to do too much interfering. Yeah, if there's something in there that you have to take out, you take it out gently, but you don't fill yourself with chemicals and things that the body is going to just have to process and have difficulty with as well. This is from Abraham Heschel in a wonderful book called Man is Not Alone. I loved it. He said, life is not meaningful unless it is serving an end beyond itself, unless it is of value to someone else. That you'll never find meaning through your ego. Life is not meaningful unless it is serving an end beyond itself, unless it is of value to someone else. And secondly, this is from Albert Schweitzer, everyone's hero. The one possible way of giving meaning to your existence is that of raising your natural relation to the world to a spiritual one. In other words, you have to return to spirit if you're going to find meaning. This is from a manual. Our mind doesn't know the way. Our heart has already been there. And our soul never left. Welcome home. Isn't that good? Our mind doesn't know the way, our heart has already been there, and our soul never left. And this is what I wrote. Having arrived home, each breath we take is an expression of our life's purpose. We no longer struggle to win, to gain the approval of others, to meet expectations others had for us, to acquire, to achieve, to hoard, or to fulfill someone else's idea of our dharma. We let go of conflict, certainty, being right, fighting, dominating, vanquishing, and feeling superior. All of this ego stuff loses its power and attraction when we arrive home where meaning and purpose welcome us. We are home. From our home is where we began. You got to know that that's our home. That was our beginning. Ambition, all the way away from our home to take on a false self. A reverse, and all of the signs of coming back, returning home. And now we're home. And this is where meaning begins to be the dominant force in your life. It begins to be the all. And those around you or in your life and those you encounter who would try to take you away from your meaning no longer even become obstacles to you. They become, in the Tao it says, a good man is a bad man's teacher, and a bad man is a good man's job. They become your job. They no longer become someone who annoys you and finds fault with you. If they do find fault with you, you're immune to it. As Maslow used to say, learn these two things and you're self-actualized. Become independent of the good opinion of other people and detach yourself from outcome. In other words, do what you do because it is your calling. One, it seems to me, that is most important is that a leader is someone who sees the connection to the whole, the oneness, the unity. And followers rarely do. And you can get leaders from people who are in positions of followers if you look for these two qualities. The first is seeing the big picture, if you will, or the connection to the whole. Leaders always seem to see that. Whereas followers, if you've got a large corporation, within a department, the follower is somebody who only sees their job and what they have to do. So they get trained to do this particular thing, and they don't really see how it impacts on the next department, and on the next department, and on the entire company, and on the entire corporate structure. They're not able to see that. They will say things like, it's not my department. I don't do those kind of things. It's not my responsibility. You have to go to the accounting department to get at that. Or you'll have to call shipping, or whatever it may be. And they stay that way. It's like they have that quality, and they almost stay that way their entire lives. There's no connection to the whole. Whereas a leader will see that everything that a person does within a department, not only how it affects them in the department, but how it affects the next department, and how it affects the entire business, and how it affects the profit picture, and so on. And so you will see leaders being conscious of the entire business unit
And that person will almost always elevate up to a point where they get to the top of the business or in positions of leadership because they're not just narrowly looking at how what I do affects just me. The second thing is that leaders, as opposed to followers, are people who see the long range effect of everything that is being done. They don't look at just how I'm acting today. For example, if you're getting on an airplane and a flight attendant is rude to a customer, the leader, if they're sitting there looking at that, or even if they're a flight attendant who has these leader qualities, not only sees how that impacts on the entire organization, the entire airline, but they see how that impacts on future business as well. A year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. If I have a bad experience with a person on an airline that turns me off to them, it isn't that individual that I'm going to be turned off to because they're just out of my life now. So the next time I'm going to make a reservation, I'm going to pick a different airline if there's one available. I might do that for 10 years. So that one tiny moment of truth that you have as a follower with a customer, if that person doesn't see the whole and doesn't also see the long range thing, will affect them dramatically. And leaders always seem to know that. And so they're not just being polite and service-oriented and kind and decent to people because that's what they've been trained to do. They are being that way, first of all, because that's the way they are. That's the way they think. And as a result of the way they think, they see their connection to not only the organization and the future of the organization, they see a bigger picture. And that's really what this is about, this whole program, what we're talking about here. That's what the whole thing is about. It's like seeing the biggest picture of all, that how you behave towards your fellow man not only affects you and them and the organization and the profit picture a year from now or 2 years from now, but it affects all of us. It affects all of mankind. It's that big a picture that I'm trying to get at here. Yes, there are little tiny segments that we may be more interested in, but that makes us followers too, when you think about it. I mean, if you're only thinking about your airline or you're only thinking about your company and how their behavior impacts on the organization or in the future, then you're still limiting yourself because it also impacts on your city or your community, and it impacts on your country, and it impacts on the world, and it impacts on all of humanity, and it impacts on the universe as well. I work for myself. I'm not in anybody else's business. I see the biggest picture of all, that ripples throughout all of humanity. And you can bring it back down to apply these principles in your daily business and in your family and in your relationship, but you can expand them outward as well, so that you begin to see that every negative act, every hostile act, everything that is not in harmony that you do, every person who is not in harmony, that person cannot cooperate with the person next to him. He will want to gobble them up like a cancer. And when they are in harmony, and enough of us get into harmony, then it impacts on the entire planet. So we have to be able to extend our vision. If we're thinking of ourselves as leaders, it's one thing to be a great leader within your corporation, or even within your department, or even within your own family. But another thing completely to be a great leader of mankind. And we all have to see ourselves that way. We have to extend out as far as we can and back down as small as we can. And that's how it impacts on everything and everyone.
How we heal our energy body by this enormous feeling of being loved. She said that when I came back, what I realized was that all I had to do was treasure my magnificence. Those were her words. I love those words. Treasure my magnificence. I mean, those of you who have heard Louise Hay speak over the years, you know, she always talks about look in the mirror and just say, I love you. Now, it sounds so simple, and sometimes people think, and Louise often says, I'm a simple woman, just a simple woman with a simple message. And the simple message is, just love yourself. But listen to what she says about this. She said, so if someone's life was not working for them, how would you suggest they turn it around? She said, one of the most powerful things I got from my NDE is how loved I am. Unconditionally loved. So now I continue to love myself unconditionally. I would strongly suggest practicing unconditional self-love. Remember, I said that the universe is only a reflection of me. If I am frustrated with the way life is working, for me, it is futile to change the external elements without looking at what's going on internally. A lot of us are very negative towards ourselves. We are our own worst enemies. The first thing I would say is to stop judging yourself and to stop beating yourself up for where you are in your life right now. If I'm finding that I am constantly frustrated with people and judging them, it is because that is how I am internally treating myself all the time. I am only expressing outward my own inner dialogue to myself. The more I love myself unconditionally, the easier it is for me to see beauty in this world and beauty in others. If I can love myself and not judge myself and see my own perfection, then I will automatically see all these in others. And the more I love myself, the more love I will have for others. It's not possible to love another more than you love yourself. Contrary to popular belief that it's selfish to love yourself, that is just not true. We cannot give away what we do not have. No matter where you are, it is only the culmination of your thoughts and beliefs up to that point, and you can change it. She says, remember, I reversed my cancer at the 11th hour. Even when the doctor said it was too late, it was still not too late. So the first thing is to realize that it is never too late to do something or change anything. It's important to see the power that the present moment holds in turning your life around. If you believe in things like attracts like, then the absolute best way to attract what's best for you is to love yourself to the point where you are filled with love and will only attract to your life everything that confirms this belief about yourself. It's actually very simple, really. And she finally concluded this: when you realize your own magnificence, you will only attract magnificence into your life. That's how I look at it. And that's what she learned in her near-death experience. That she said, I didn't come back from that and think that I had to be a loving person, because that involves having to do something. She said, I had to come back and be love. Be love. Patanjali, the great Indian teacher back in the 3rd century BC, said, when you are steadfast, steadfast means you never slip. He said, when you are steadfast in your abstention of thoughts of harm directed towards yourself and others, that all living creatures will cease to feel fear in your presence. That's what St. Francis was. That's why he could talk to the birds and to the wolves. When you're steadfast, when you hold that energy within you. When they asked her at the very end of this long interview, they asked her, and the fact that this was just sent to me by somebody, and now this has become not only a friend, but a colleague and an author at Hay House, I am beyond thrilled. They said, if there was a message or a lesson from your near-death experience that you wish everyone could know or understand, something that you wish you could shout out from the rooftops, they said, what would it be? Now remember, a woman who was dead and now is cancer-free. I would want everyone to know that every part of you is magnificent. Your ego, your mind, your intellect, your body, your spirit, your soul, it's who you are. A beautiful product of this universe's creation. Every part of you is perfect. There is nothing to let go, nothing to forgive, nothing to attain. You already are everything you need to be. We make it so complicated, but it's not. If a religion makes you feel lesser than God, then you have either misinterpreted or it is not doing a good job of teaching you the truth. If a guru or a teacher or a master makes you feel that you are not yet enlightened and still have more to learn, release or let go of before getting there, then they are not doing a good job of teaching you who you are or you're misinterpreting them. Most of our suffering stems from our feeling less than. We are not less than anything or anyone. We are complete. The only thing you need to learn is that you already are what you are seeking to attain. Just express your uniqueness with abandon. That's why you are made the way you are, and that's why you are in this physical world. That's what she learned from her brush with death. And now is out there not only writing about it, but telling people that it is in your magnificence.